I find myself frequently recirculating similar subject matter, which is okay because we're in a condition in which endless debates continue endlessly. And I question everything, all belief systems, all philosophies that I encounter, as should you, because be wary of anything that man says, because it's just something that man says. But and that includes myself, of course. What my point is that I've noticed a pattern over the years, um, in a lot of communities that study the spiritual subject matter, the nature of reality. Um, this doesn't really include the near death experience community, but a lot of esoteric teachers and wisdom, like some of the newer people I've been watching, that are really deep, interesting, really powerful stuff that you could learn a lot from. But I hear very little, including from religious circles, from evangelical circles. I hear so little about the love of God. Um, doesn't matter, like a myriad of belief systems. As many of us know, the movie The Matrix has essentially become its own religion, with millions in the population believing that they're stuck in an endless reincarnation cycle with no end in sight and no hope, and they're just batteries for a machine. And where's the love in that? It's a cold, heartless, dead philosophy. And I wanted to point out that actually the movie Matrix is was designed to be an allegory for a modern way of life, for modern industrialized society that has become so distant and so detached from nature, from their own natural selves, that they themselves have become machine like, and hence plugging themselves into the Borg. So it's a social, what do you call it? It's a social commentary essentially for our current condition, but of course it has a lot of truth in it as well. Um, my point is that I really like channels like Love Covered Life, who I've done the interview with about my near death experience, because this individual comes from a place of love, and she comes from a place that's deep inside her heart, and all of the teachings originate from love. And in a lot of these new age communities, you hear a ton about self-empowerment, and how it's almost like in this flight or fight mode constantly, where there's these demon aliens always about to attack you, and you're always ready to respond, and you have to fight back. Now, there's nothing wrong with self empowerment. We have to have self empowerment. We have to evolve and grow. Um, we shouldn't be led around like a bunch of sheep like we have been the last couple of years, especially. However, there's limits to that as well. There is a place for self empowerment, and then there's also a place for being humble. Um, First and foremost, we are like spiritual toddlers. We're little infant children. So by proclaiming and saying that you you just do it all on your own, ask for no help. Here you are, you're a warrior, you do it all, which is kind of funny because that's kind of like asking a 2 year old, hey, go put on a hard hat. Here's your hammer. Here's a nail gun. Here's some 2x4s. And I need you to start working right now. It's okay to ask for help. It's okay to pray. A lot of these communities say that prayer is disempowering, and I disagree because I'll tell you in my own personal experience how a deep, thoughtful, heartfelt prayer will be answered if it truly comes from a place of love and you're genuinely seeking. It will be answered. And there has to be a balance between this obsession with self empowerment and being humble and realizing, it's okay for me to pray. It's okay for me to ask for help because there's some things I just can't handle on my own. And a lot of these doctrines are very Madame Blavatsky, Crowleyan philosophies, very rooted in that stuff. You just have to look a little bit deeper into the things Crowley wrote about, which were also very brilliant. He wasn't a dumbass by any means. But, we got to be careful. We got to be careful because ultimately there's a lot of fear-based stuff. There's still a lot of fear, even in communities that proclaim to be not of fear. I still can't wrap my head around this idea that you're desolate, you're alone, and there is no help for you. You're just abandoned, whether it be the reincarnation cycle, whether it be if you don't believe like I believe, you're going to hell. I'm going to get raptured because I'm special, and you're going to suffer here in torment on this earth. It's this overarching theme of abandonment. What about your soul family? What about your angels? What about the eternal and unchanging, unconditional love of God? Why do we forget about the love of God? All of these philosophical discussions are ultimately utterly meaningless without that love. So, my point saying, like, for example, Howard Storm. He had a hellish near-death experience. And when I had mine, I wasn't all that familiar with his. And the similarities that we experienced, I read his book. And I contacted him after, and we just actually had an email exchange. If you don't know who Howard Storm is, he's one of the most famous near-death experiencers. Look him up if you don't know his story. But he had a very dark, malevolent near-death experience. And in that desolation, and trust me, in that hellish condition, it did feel timeless. It did feel desolate. It did feel cut off from the love of God. And it was absolutely pain beyond your greatest imagination. A pain in your heart, most and foremost. But look what happened to Howard Storm. In the absolute vile condition that he was in, a voice told him to pray to God. And it kept telling him until he did. And he subsequently ended up being rescued from that condition. And even in my own experience, I was crying out and screaming to God to get me out. And eventually I came to and I snapped out of it, and I was back in my body. Of course, there could be coercion and manipulation of all sorts once we reach the threshold of death. And a person who does not know thyself at all, who is completely blind, very well could be manipulated, taken advantage of. I'm not denying that there is a very real possibility of that, hence the hellish experiences. Possibly coercion into reincarnation. All of these things are, of course, very possible. But to say that you were just stuck, there's no hope, there's no help, there's no love in that.